Well, as I mentioned before, it is just wonderful to be back here with you and to see all your faces. I have missed you and I have thought about you. I hope that your year is winding down well, and I hope that your thoughts are ever on the present and on the beauty that we can find even in this darker time of year, this somewhat barren time of year. I want to remind you that the solstice actually arrives tomorrow night. It doesn't arrive with the sunrise. For us, in our time zone, or in our longitude, it arrives at 11:49 p.m. I don't know about you, but I probably won't be around to celebrate it. But that's okay, because we can make proxy celebration this morning. And I tried to place bells around, and I put them under the seats so they wouldn't be jangling before, but I know that some of you couldn't wait, so I've already heard them. So let's just go ahead and ring a bell for solstice. If you have a bell, if not, look around on the floor, there should be one. All right. Now put them back under your seats, please. So as a result, Tuesday will be the shortest day of the year. But there is good news, people. There is good news. Already the afternoons are getting longer. The way it works out, because there's a shift, the mornings get later, and the afternoons are get earlier, but then they don't match up. So the afternoons start to get later before the mornings do. So that's good news. Unfortunately, the bad news is it's really only about 5 seconds extra of light that you're getting every afternoon, so you might not be noticing it just yet. I do remember reading that there are at least 37 holidays that relate to the solstice in some way or other. Daughter holidays, granddaughter holidays, I don't know how you would call them. But they all fall at this time of year. Many cultures and religions, continents. We all know about Hanukkah, the 8th night of which was last Sunday. New Year's Day approaches. Kwanzaa, which I recently found out has a Unitarian Universalist connection, which I have to learn more about. But have you ever heard of Baiwi Festival? This is the festival that celebrates the return of the sun goddess in Finland. Or Shavazastani, which is it's a Kurdish observance of the victory of light over the darkness. Well, I don't know if you enjoy any of the winter holidays, or if you look on them as kind of a bah humbug time of year. I heard, yeah. Did I get an amen on that? or was that a bah humbug I heard? I can get really bah humbuggy because Christmas time is a time that I am once again reminded of all the things I have not done. It's the end of the year. There's all those plans I made right after last Christmas that I would get started right away this year and not let it be December 20th. And I still hadn't bought one Christmas present. There's stress around family and friends. And of course, there's the sadness that can come remembering previous holidays that were so bright and brightened by the presence of people who are no longer in our lives. It's a heavy time of year because we have that on the one hand, and at the other hand, there's the bright lights, there's the parties, there's the things to get to, there's the revelry. And while my heart goes out to those of us who grieve at this time of year, and I certainly empathize with the stress, at the same time, I think it's an opportunity to see the beauty in the holidays and see the beauty in Christmas. I thought of it last year for the first time. I imagined, okay, I'm feeling kind of bah humbuggy about all of this, but what if none of this were here? What if December came and went, and it was merely that quiet time of the year? Actually, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But at the same time, I wonder, with these short days, and if we were just plodding along in the cold, particularly, I know many of you, or some of you, have moved down from more northern regimes, where around this time of year it's getting dark at 4 in the afternoon. The sun's not coming up till 8. And I believe that this, sad seasonal and seasonality, something aligned depression, is a real thing for many of us. And so my reflection today is on the wonder, not that it's any particular holiday, Christmas, or Solstice, or Hanukkah, Bari, but the wonder of this human capacity that we have made a holiday in this dark time of the year. Now, we like to think of ourselves as modern people. We do have the gifts of so much knowledge of the world at our fingertips. And we look back upon our ancestors with a little bit of patronizing, don't we? Well, they did as best as they could do, given what they knew. But I think they may have had it right in developing these holidays to cope with this dark time of the year. And I don't know, Phil, maybe you would know, the football, the coach who said, the best defense is a good offense. That's what I think of this time of year. The best defense is a good offense. Here's this time that can conjure up sadness, even hopelessness in us about the human condition. Certainly for us these days, with what's going on in the world, refugee crises, gun violence, presidential debates. What do? We have a party. Those festivals I mentioned, those 31 related to the solstice, all include those great things that make a party, that make us feel good. Firelight, special foods, feasting, over-feasting. Well, okay, maybe that doesn't make us feel so good. Drinking, visiting with friends and family, gift-giving. Surely the ancients knew what they were doing. They were trying to relieve our sagging spirits. And one of these, I wouldn't call it a separate, I guess it's related to Christmas holiday, is that just happened last Sunday, is Santa Lucia Day. Anybody Lutheran or have Swedish background? You know, that's the holiday where the oldest daughter of the family has a wreath of evergreens on her head, and there's candles on her head, and she walks around paths barefoot down the halls of the house, candles on her head, giving hot cross buns to everybody in the family. Now this is so interesting. I mean, who could not smile at that? And yet, St. Lucia Day is actually based on a pretty ugly martyrdom. But what do we do as humans? We go for the goal. We make the offense. It's true, we have our own scarcities to battle. With our many comforts, winter still lies heavily upon us. And whether it's the various issues that I mentioned above, these world issues, or whether it's personal things that we face, that we know our friends face, people in our community, nevertheless, there's an opportunity in Christmas. Just pause to be in the moment. And despite that, to go on the offensive. It's the most wonderful time of the year. You know, this is related to the whole idea of what ritual is for. And there's certainly no other time of year in which we have as many rituals. Now, what do you think of when you hear the word ritual? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Spit it out, a sentence or a word around ritual. What do you think of when you hear that word?
Incense.
Repetition.
Celebration.
I've heard incense, celebration, and repetition. Those are, other things you think of with ritual.
Tradition.
Tradition.
Family.
Family.
Gathering.
Gathering together. And yet, there came a time when in the Western culture, we started to believe that we had no reason for ritual anymore. This happened as an ascendant scientific worldview took hold in the 19th and 20th century, and it prompted a real diminution of religious ritual in Western culture. This diminution was evidenced by participation in various religious institutions, particularly in the institutions that were highly ritualized, such as Orthodox traditions or Catholic traditions. However, recently I saw an article in Scientific American where some behavioral scientists, Francesca Gino and Michael Norton, discussed the need for ritual in our lives and the effectiveness of ritual. That was a new one for me to think about. They write, the symbolic behaviors we perform before, during, and after a meaningful event are surprisingly ubiquitous across culture and time. Rituals take an extraordinary array of shapes and forms. At times they are performed in communal or religious settings, at times performed in solitude, at times involving fixed, repeated sequences of actions, at other times not. People engage in rituals with the intention of achieving a wide set of desired outcomes, from reducing anxiety to boosting their confidence, to alleviating their grief, to performing well in a competition, and even to making it rain. Now, when you think about it that way, again, you think, those dumb ancients, they were really onto something, even with their lack of scientific understanding. Now, as to whether a community dance will actually change the outcome, induce the clouds to drop their moisture on a drought-stricken area, I remain a skeptic. And yet, the author's right. Recent research suggests that rituals may be more rational than they appear. Okay, so we may think that the rain will not fall in response to our dance. So where is the rationality here? Ritual serves not just to help us find the meaning in our lives, but to help us prepare and accept the events we encounter. Solstice and its many daughter holidays could be thought of as a way to embrace the darkness, to embrace the feelings of sadness that we might have during a time when the light is so reduced that it starts to work on our brain chemistry. The article that I was just reading from wasn't talking about solstice or even any particular religious rituals. Interestingly enough, what they did go on to describe was a study that they had created where they created a loss for people, and it was actually a monetary loss. People that were participating in the study. And in reality, since they couldn't take their money, they set it up so that they wouldn't win something. They had an expectation of winning something, but then they wouldn't win it. And then they divided the people into two groups. And one group went through a little grieving ritual. It involved writing some things on paper, expressing their disappointment, tearing things up, and I think there was some salt shaking done. The other group got none of this, except for the expression of disappointment to one another. When the two groups were polled, significantly, the people who had participated in the grieving ritual to deal with their loss of expected wealth were doing much better than the people who had not participated in that. Interesting little study. Lovely little study. Now, one of the things science tells us is not to go from the particular to the general. And yet, I can't help but think about that. Something so mundane as failing to win a prize. And yet people do experience disappointment when things don't go as we'd hoped or as we planned. The ancients knew that people are set up for disappointment, particularly in a dark time. So why not have a ritual to cope with that disappointment? One of the themes that I think is strong in these winter holidays, or at least comes across to me, has to do with trust. And if rituals were set up in the winter, what were they to deal with? To deal with the grieving at the turning of the year as the light was less, as the leaves had all fallen off the trees, as the reminder of our own mortality would be so evident. Could we not trust the future? Now I know there's these stories about why Stonehenge was built and these, what are some of the other names? Newgrange. Now, there's a number of these thought to be some sort of astronomical calendars in Britain, and they found some in South America and other parts of the world who, I guess, tomorrow morning or Tuesday morning, depending on where the longitude is, when the sun comes up, the sun will shine right into the cave or right in through a slit, pinpointing when the solstice would be. And I remember hearing these stories. Oh yes, the ancients put this there, and then they built these great bonfires because they had to bring the light back. As if they didn't know that the light was coming back. They built Stonehenge, for crying out loud. They knew it was coming back. No, it wasn't, the ritual wasn't truly to make the light return. It was to make meaning around the light's return. To trust, even though things are dark, that even though the leaves have dropped all onto the ground and they are dead and dying in the forest, that nevertheless the light is going to be returning. The light will return Tuesday morning. I want to say tomorrow night at 11:49, but that doesn't really make sense, does it? And our job is to find the ritual, find and embrace the ritual that helps us to trust, to remember, and in our embracing, to show others, so that we can be that light, can be the reflection that this world needs. I'm going to wind up this sermon with a little poem that I found. This is from an ancient solstice celebration, not the poem itself, but the story it alludes to. And this is the tale of the oak and holly king. We've seen the faces in art of the green man, sometimes in oak and sometimes with the holly leaves. A rivalry many centuries old, since ancient times, a tale was told. of two great kings, one dark and one light, who twice a year would heroically fight. The Holly King, the darker one, ruled the winter, the dimming sun. While the King of Oak was vibrant and bright, he reigned over summer and the sun's growing light. At Yule they would battle. 'Twas an inspiring scene, and the victory would go to the mighty Oak King. But at midsummer's time, with the sun at its peak, the Holly King would win, and the Oak King grow weak. And so it went on, year after year. The story was told to all who could hear. So honor the Oak King in summer when the sun's light is warm, and the Holly King in winter, and the swirling snowstorms. My friends, as we continue on in this time of darkness and light, we have a chance to look at the old myths in a new way, not to work in resistance to them, but to find our meanings to them and put them out there in the world.